Today I'm going to cover 5 concepts that makes Pvlace's samples and melodies so good and how you can use these ideas in your own beat making. Pvlace is one of the most popular artists in hip-hop for a reason. There are a lot of things that he does really well that everyone can use when making beats. And I'm going to cover 5 of those concepts in this video. First off, one of the things that newer beat makers get wrong is their idea of complexity. Oftentimes, beat makers conflate complexity with quality, meaning they try to build their melodies and their samples with as much complexity as possible, thinking that correlates with quality. But as Pvlace says in this video with Producer Grind, which is a great podcast for beat makers, by the way.
Keep it so simple. I love it when you keep it simple. But it's in every art. Like, it's not only music. When you make things like simple, it always works.
Here he mentions the value of simplicity and not overcomplicating things. We can even see this when he breaks down one of his samples. We can see he has one layer built for his loop, and once he layers yet another sound on top, it's the exact same pattern, so he isn't going out of his way to force additional variations and complexity if it's not needed. As well, one other important thing to note, once he introduces a more melodic layer on top, the way this layer is used in the actual final beat is very limited. And this is where a lot of producers go wrong in terms of their arrangement in relation to complexity. This is something that I also run into a lot when I review other people's beats. Oftentimes when producers create melodies, they take the most complex, dense part of their creation and they use that part for their entire beat. And when you do that, you'll end up having problems when it comes time to arranging, because it's going to end up being a lot more difficult to build out all the different sections in your beat. If the main loop in your beat's already super dense, how are you going to introduce more layers, like for a hook as an example? And this is why simplicity is key. This leads me to my next point that I want to cover, which is flexibility. Looking at the way he builds his samples and melodies, there's an inherent level of flexibility in them that allows for more creativity. A lot of the times when I hear loops like this one, for example, now this loop sounds great, but it's going to be extremely difficult to take this and do much of anything other than make a trap beat out of it. The way it's structured, its density, the sound selection, the melody itself is just so inflexible that it basically forces me to be very narrow in terms of the possibilities that I can explore. Whereas with Pvlace's samples, there are just more ideas possible because, again, of its simplicity, but also because there's just more material that varies across the entire loop. As you guys can hear in Pvlace's loop right here, if I were to use this loop, I can make something that's a little bit more trap oriented, like so. Or I can make something that sounds a little bit more old school using a different part of that exact same sample. And I can even add my own layers on top and introduce my own creative ideas later on during the beat making process. Whereas this would be a lot harder to do if I were to use the first loop that I showed you guys. This is a concept that can be helpful for you when you're building out your beat. By starting with something a little bit more simple, you have a lot more potential ideas that you could explore because this loop is just far more flexible. It's just going to allow for more creativity. The third concept is using restrictions and limitations.
When it takes me longer than 20 minutes, I just quit the FLP. I just close it. I'm like, no, it takes too long.
In order to actually be productive, it can be beneficial to implement self-imposed restrictions. A lot of the times when producers are in the building phase and something isn't working out, we tend to add in sound after sound, thinking that's going to be the solution. But sometimes the reason why things aren't coming together may be because the idea itself is just fundamentally flawed. The problem here is that you may end up wasting a lot of time before realizing that it's flawed. And that's why implementing some time limitation on yourself can be a solution. It forces you to make a choice at some point during the creation phase to either step up or step off. As well, limiting the amount of sounds can be a good idea as well.
Back then I was using like 8 Omnisphere. But as of right now, it's like I found a perfect like formula right now. and it's not more than 4 sounds.
As you add in more and more sounds, the less and less you and the listener tend to focus on any given sound. And because of this, you'll begin to treat each and every sound as less of a priority. You may even end up being more and more careless with the different sounds in your beat. And as you all know, all it takes is just having one sound in your loop stick out and not fit that can ruin the entire beat. So using restrictions and limiting yourself in terms of the time and quantity of sounds are great tools to create better ideas. Now, in terms of the sounds that Pvlace actually uses, I have seen him make reference to things like Omnisphere, Contact, and Spitfire libraries, but I found something really interesting in his interview with Producer Grind that I think really warrants pointing out.
I can't talk about it. It's
Not
like
at all.
secret, yeah.
Secret.
Yeah. I have like some effect chains that will probably no one has.
And here's some more footage that really illustrates this point.
Yeah, it's half times. Nothing special here, that's why I can show everything.
A lot of the times you may see other creators do breakdowns like this where they say things like these are the exact sounds that they use, these are the exact presets and the exact effects. If you want to get their sounds, these are their secrets. And as you can see in this footage, it's pretty apparent that the actual specifics are typically kept secret. So I could sit here and claim to know which exact presets and which specific sounds you can use to sound exactly like Pvlace, but that would make me a liar. I want to make sure to give you guys actual good and real information, so I'm not going to go ahead and be negligent and make some stuff up here. But this leads me to my next point, the concept that you can take away from the same interview.
And I think it makes me so unique from other people who make melodies, because I come from a different background, you know. It's always when you grew up, you listen to this, but in Europe it's different, like because EDM was so big.
It's the idea of originality. If you're looking to find out which sounds he uses and how you can sound just like him, you're already a step behind. As he said in this interview, part of what makes him unique is his interest in other genres. This is something that I have said in some of my live streams. It's really valuable listening to other types of genres because it can help you create something more original. All of us are influenced by what we're exposed to, and if you're only exposed to hip-hop, you're likely listening to ideas and styles that have already been done. You will, in turn, more likely make something more derivative and get to an idea that's already been explored and created by someone else. So I recommend listening to all types of music, and this is also why learning sampling can be so useful. Not only can you find unique sounds that you can use in your beats, but you also get exposed to different types of genres. Whether it be 60s jazz, Japanese soundtracks, horror OSTs, 70s prog rock, you'll end up learning a lot, and this will help you be a lot more unique as well. And by the way, if you want to learn how to sample and improve at it, I have a video that you guys can check out right above my head. And finally, the last important concept is understanding variability. This is something that I mentioned in my melody video that I put out a while back. As you've been seeing, using a variety of sounds that have a different tonality to them and shape to them will lead to a lot more of a rich, robust beat. Whereas something that I've noticed with newer producers is that they'll make this huge, dense, complex melody all out of one instrument. In this footage here, you guys can see, Pvlace uses a variety of sounds in order to build out his ideas. This just makes for more of an engaging listen because by combining different textures and sounds together, you can more easily get to a unique idea. It's going to be harder to just grab a piano or a guitar and hope you can get to an original idea. You're depending more on the musicality to create something original at that point. But by layering different textures, combining a variety of sounds together, you gain the opportunity to create an idea that's original through texture. It's not only the specific sounds that you use, but the choice in putting different sounds together that can help you create a more unique idea for your beats. So hopefully you guys have enjoyed this video. I want to briefly mention I'm putting out my own course early next year. Head over to betterbeatmaker.com if you're interested in getting early access, discounts, a bunch of free stuff as well. You're not going to want to miss out on this. As well, like and subscribe. My free drum kit's available in the description box below, as well as a link to the Discord if you want your beats reviewed live. I do that every so often, and I will see you guys next time.